All right, in this video, we're going to look at business models and trade associations. So what we're going to do is identify independent businesses and explain the challenges and opportunities they may present. Learn the definition of hospitality chain operations and how they relate to brands. There's a distinction there. And identify the different business models of hospitality chain operations. List any advantages and disadvantages of hospitality chain operations, and recognize that big hospitality chains, the lodging and food service industry can be beneficial, and how they kind of come to be, and then understand hospitality trade associations and the purpose they serve as well. Let's start with independent hospitality businesses. These are businesses that don't have any brand affiliation. That is like saying it's like a airline like Midwest Airlines used to be, that was not affiliated with one of the majors like Delta or American or the like, right? So they're not part of a larger organization. They are not part of a franchise or any sort of chain of businesses. So this might be bed and breakfast in Door County, Wisconsin, as an example. Some of the challenges are that they have no support of brand affiliations, so they don't have a separate financial, marketing, or a human resources department. All of the operation is housed within the operation generally. They might farm out some accounting or something of that nature, but for the most part, they are all within the operation. So independent lodging properties, these are historic hotels often. They are independent seasonal properties also, which can be found in high tourist areas. They rely on desirable location and strong marketing agencies, and independent properties can find their target market and compete with brands effectively using the internet and social media. Especially if they're a destination restaurant or hotel, it's important to utilize the effectiveness of technology today, which can help grow that brand at a larger and faster rate than what it was previously, when you had to have a lot of paper mailers and things of that nature. Independent food service establishments, they're primarily made up of independent businesses, that is the food service industry. So we have a couple examples there: French Laundry and Spoon and Stable in California and in Minneapolis, respectively. And guests like going to restaurants that cater to their needs, and you can do this more in the independent business realm. And the reason for this is because you have a smaller, more intimate staff, and you generally have a smaller restaurant. And you don't have the very kind of commodified or robotic-like systems. You have this creativity and flexibility within those organizations as well. Project employment numbers for the restaurant industry are 16.3 million employees by 2027. So this, the independent side continues to grow. Another example of that and how the expansion of the food service industry, we can think back to Katrina in 2005 in New Orleans, when there were, I think, roughly 300 less independent restaurants than there are the year after the storm. So in about 2007, 2008, there were 300 more independent restaurants in New Orleans than there was previous to the storm. So just one example of how the local and intimate character of independent restaurants can play a big factor, especially when there are momentous life occasions like a hurricane or storm, which calls them back to this idea of authenticity and independence. Hospitality chain operations, this is a business under one management or ownership. So chain operated hotels, restaurants, and other similar businesses are owned by the same company. All are found in different geographic regions, locations, and generally this means that 3 or more similar types are typically a chain, though there's not a set rule. So some examples, you may have a company like Marriott, which has not just the Marriott line, but many other different variations of that hotel chain, all under the same company. We have McDonald's, of course. Now they also have their McCafe concepts when they entered into Italy and others to try and create a little more elegance to their brand as well. But they're all under the roof of McDonald's out of Illinois. Chipotle, right? They have this franchise model as well, where they have restaurants across the country, and some are owned by the corporations, some are owned by individual entities, and they're based out of Minnesota, but all out of one company, and has that service of the human resources, financial, otherwise, which will be managed under one roof. And then, of course, Hilton, very similar to Marriott, has kind of a wide range of different types of hotels, but all under the Hilton name. So the hospitality chains kind of operate based off of geography as well, so we can kind of typify them based off of where they are or how large their scope is. So you might look at the smallest being regional or local chains. These are things like Harold's Chicken Shack in the Chicagoland area and kind of the Midwest region, Cousins Subs based out of Milwaukee, and Herbert's and Gerbert's as well out of Wisconsin. Then you might look at national brands such as Chick-fil-A, In-N-Out, and Buffalo Wild Wings, which have a little bit larger reach. And then finally, some multinationals. If you're traveling international, the first generally American companies that you're going to see restaurant-wise are the McDonald's, Pizza Hut, and Kentucky Fried Chicken. In fact, there's a song that goes along with it that I'm not going to sing now. Structure of business models. So there are many different types of business models. There can be a simple, mixed franchise, management franchise, and brand management form. And we'll look at each of those individually. Start with simple form. This, of course, is the simplest business model. It can be a single owner, an investor that has full equity, and the parent company then fully owns and operates all the units in the chain, and they keep all the profits. So this is how a company like Jason's Deli started. They originally started out as a chain of restaurants in Beaumont, Texas, and the 5 owners, Joe Totores among them, owns the business, and then eventually they grew into something like a mixed franchise form. And this is when there is a mixed ownership, with some units being owned by the franchisor and some being owned by the franchisee. So some are corporate-owned stores and some are owned by franchisees. The franchisor gets revenue in many different ways, so franchise fees, royalty fees, marketing fees. If you watch the film The Founder, this is how the idea of McDonald's started as well too, so that they can grow the business faster, but also at the same time profit from each of those organizations. Then there's a management franchise form, and this is really how the Jason's Deli has now turned to today, and this is where you have franchising as a method for growing a business to sell goods or services at multiple locations, and you have a franchisor and franchisee, and you might also have a management contractor who are owners, lenders, or managing operators who own a share of the business. So they may have management fees that are a percentage basis, and you may also have management fees from the franchisor, who will also take a share of some of the expenses as well. Brand management. When a mega corporation owns multiple chain operations under the same parent umbrella structure, it refers to each of these chain operations as a brand rather than a chain. So we can look at an example of that here with the Hilton brand. We can see what I believe to be all of their collection now. So while it started with the Hilton organization, they have many other different types of hotels which have a distinctly different brand, but still, as you can kind of see through some of the names there, are under the Hilton portfolio, either directly or indirectly. To look at that in the restaurant industry as well, you can look at the Darden Corporation based out of Virginia, which has the restaurants listed here. It has grown from just having things like Olive Garden to move on to items like Longhorn, Cheddar's, Seasons 52, Bahama Breeze. So as a consumer, we may not realize from the outside that these organizations are owned by the same company, but we may go to a mall and see both an Olive Garden and a Longhorn Steakhouse and believe that they're distinctly separate businesses, but they're actually both under the Darden portfolio or name. So there are advantages and disadvantages to hospitality chain operations, and whether you want to do it kind of in a brand mix or do it directly with other brand management, whether you want to include the name Hilton or whether you want to hide the name, like in the case of Darden. The advantages are a market reach, economics of scale, streamlined operations, marketing power, service options. You have access to available capital to grow the business, and ultimately professional management and the skills and systems that come along with that. Like a Hilton hotel is going to have many more systems than if it was just the Home2 suites alone, previous to being purchased or created by Hilton. Some disadvantages to hospitality chains. Well, you lose some of the operational constraints because you're lending out that management capacity to a manager or a franchisee. So of course you have a little bit of loss of control as well. While you set up the systems, they may not be followed directly to the T as you might hope or imagine. So you're going to have to spend a lot of time managing that loss of control as well. There is a risk through association, increased legal risk, of course, as well, because you have more parties involved. Brand image dependency, if one hotel and another regional location does not operate the same as, let's say there's one in New York, does not operate the way that one does in Boise, Idaho, well, your brand is going to be dependent upon that image, and you're putting your name out there for the consistency or what the consumer expects is consistency. There may be expansion trouble. To look at that, just take a look at the movie Founder, and of course cannibalization as well too, as people may try to hurt you from within. Hospitality trade associations, just to kind of get understood of them, they're organizations founded and funded by businesses that operate in a specific sector of the industry. So you may have some specifically for the restaurant industry, like the National Restaurant Association, or for the hotel industry, like the International Hotel and Restaurant Association. I would highly encourage you, if you have the opportunity to get involved in some of these organizations very young in your career, you have the opportunity to create a lot of networking, to go to a lot of industry trade group events, business association events, which allow you to network with the who's who of the industry as well. So I've listed a few there to be included as well. The American Bus Association for transportation for the hospitality industry, the Asian American Hotel Owners Association. You can see that there's kind of a niche organization for any and all. HTNG is the technology organization. You can find something for your liking as well too. So if you have a particular interest in the industry, if you just like human resources, there's likely to be a human resources trade association for the hospitality industry as well. So definitely get abreast of those. Go to their websites, sign up for their email list. It's always a great way to stay abreast with the trends that are happening in the industry. And they often have a lot of great student rates, first of all, but then second of all, they'll give you a lot of reports, analytics, and trending information regarding your particular industry as well. I know I followed the National Restaurant Association a lot when I was an undergrad, and your chair as well too. It really provided me a lot of great reporting information on the industry writ large. In summary, the hospitality industry is made up of many different customer-oriented business models. These models include independently run, simple forms of chains, mixed franchise chains, management franchise forms, and brand management forms of businesses. So it's important to understand the business that you're working for and the model that they work under, and the impacts that that has on your hospitality career in management. And additionally, hospitality trade associations are essential to the industry. And a few of those are presented, and along with a discussion of their importance. And again, I highly encourage you to take a look at their email lists, or even just checking their website from time to time. So that's an overview of the hospitality trade associations and the business models for hospitality organizations.